Do you have a Zoolander problem?
No, Jesus. Yeah, Zoolander.
Are you just ridiculously good looking, as Vogue said?
Hardly.
No, seriously, what do you do about that?
You don't do anything about it, because if you're going to do something about it, then you're bullshitting people. You know what? I am who I am. And it's fine. You don't have to like me. Or maybe you like a slick person. I don't know. Whatever. It's okay.
But the reason why I brought it up because you talked about being authentic.
Yeah.
And I think it sometimes works against you.
Yeah. It's just who I am. It's just who I am. And, I could go out and I can get one of these Hollywood producers to be a member of my campaign and pick out which taupe suit I'll wear, or which we've seen happen in the past when people literally are getting stylists to become someone they're not. I'm okay with who I am. I am who I am.
He's been called embarrassingly handsome, dangerously ambitious, and the one that seems to sting the most, slick. California Governor Gavin Newsom has spent his entire political career outrunning a caricature. And now with a new memoir out called Young Man in a Hurry, he's trying something different. He's actually letting people in. The book is a very candid look at a childhood much more complicated than the polished image suggests. A father who pretty much wasn't there, a mother working 3 jobs trying to keep things together, and a kid with dyslexia who was told it was okay to be average. And he was not okay with that. Governor Gavin Newsom, thank you for sitting down with me. And before we talk about the book, which is very candid, almost like a therapy session in a way, isn't it?
I could talk about the writing. It certainly was.
Yeah. I want to ask you about what's going on in the world for a moment because it's so unsettled. When you heard about the attack on Iran on Saturday morning in the very early hours, gosh, I don't know, in L.A., it might have still been Friday night. What was your reaction?
Wasn't surprised. I was Napoleon or someone that said, the only thing you can't do with a sword is sit on it. And the fact that Trump brought that second aircraft carrier in, that he had already assembled one of the largest military forces outside of the Gulf, the original Iraq War, suggested something was going to take shape. I didn't have much confidence in Witkoff and Jared's ability to land an actual deal. I wasn't convinced they really wanted a deal, or the Israelis wanted a deal. I think they wanted an opportunist. They were going to take advantage of this opportunity with a degraded regime that had been substantially degraded over the course of the last couple years, and take advantage of something that, frankly, has been on the agenda, not just for allies in the United States, but I think for this country for many, many years.
As a politician, I'm curious how you explain this radical shift in course in terms of campaigning on, I'm going to not start wars, I'm going to end wars, and suddenly we're becoming such an interventionist country.
Well, I guess, forgive me for not being shocked. You're talking about Donald Trump, who shape shifts on an hourly basis. I mean, we can just, all of the promises made versus promises kept. He said we're going to be healthier and wealthier, and we're poorer and sicker. I mean, we can go through the list. So that litany doesn't surprise me. Of course, complete fraud in many ways, shapes, or form. But so is J.D. Vance. He was complicit in that respect. So was folks, on the right across the spectrum, the MAGA folks that said this is what makes Trump different. But look, He's failing and flailing at home, and he can't control the agenda on affordability. He doesn't know what to do. The one thing he's learned to control is aspects of his foreign policy because they're unilateral. They don't require, from his perspective, the law suggests differently, but from his perspective, a lot of coordination, a lot of alliedship, and so he has the ability to make news. The guy doesn't care if he's the heel or the hero as long as he's the star, and this makes those bright lights are now all over and on Trump. So in that respect, it's not surprising.
The administration seems all over the map. I don't know how closely you've been following all their various explanations and their rationales, plural, for this military action. You hear Marco Rubio saying that, well, Israel was going to be attacked, so we wanted to join with Israel because we wanted to minimize U.S. casualties. Then you hear President Trump saying, no, we pulled Israel along. They didn't get us to participate. Then from Mar-a-Lago, you hear the president say, this is your chance. This is your once-in-a-generation chance for regime change. Pete Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of War, says this is not about regime change. So what, in your view, is the rationale, or is there a rationale?
There isn't one.
You said in your first answer, Governor Newsom, that this has been thought about for a long time. This regime did need changing.
Yeah, I mean, well, and certainly 37 years with the current former
47.
Supreme Leader. Well, 37 with his reign, 47 overall.
Overall,
but certainly
since
with
the Shah.
Yeah, but 37 in the more contemporary lens. And look, I mean, we're here in L.A., and not a lot of tears are being shed for the Supreme Leader's death. Quite the contrary, which is interesting. But look, this is stepping back. They're making it up as they go. With the real reason, please stand up. It'd be nice if it actually revealed himself. The President of the United States never made a compelling case, never made any case to the American people for taking this action. The imminent threat is illusory at best, doesn't exist. He's making it up in real time. It was about the nuclear program, which he said just months ago. He obliterated, his words, not ours. He was argumentative about that. So it can't be about that by definition. His own standard, he had already obliterated it, but then became that until it became about ballistic missiles. Then it became about proxies and militia. And then it became about our allies now that are all under attack and assault. We now have a regional war. It's playing out in real time in Lebanon, Syria. It's playing out in the UAE. It's playing out with allies that are wondering what the hell just happened. It's playing out in the energy and oil markets and the oil shocks and the stock market. It's playing out in our pocketbooks and with the not only Treasury of the United States, but 6 Americans already dead, more likely to die. And he still hasn't made a compelling rationale. Save this. He made a better argument for his imperial palace yesterday and the curtains and the design for the East Wing at a sacred ceremony than he did for why 4 people yesterday, we've learned 2 more died today, had lost their lives. He was more interested in that than he was the lives of 4 Americans that died for what, and we're still trying to figure that out.
So why do you think he did it? Do you really think it's to distract from what's happening at home?
No, I don't think it's that clear. It's the 7th incursion. So this is a president that is actually moved to more air and military strikes than Biden did his entire 4 years in 1 year. So this is very consistent in that respect. He's been willing to take risks. He's had some, by sort of traditional standards, the unintended consequences have yet to be felt on many of those prior incursions. And I think he was sort of testing the theory and also testing this notion that the regime was in retreat, that they were substantially diminished, that if there was going to be a chance to do this, this was the opportunity to do it. And of course, Netanyahu has many reasons to do it. It's been cause for him for decades and decades. He has political considerations, particularly with the Supreme Court looking down his throat. He's got elections that he's facing. He's looking at annexing the West Bank. He's looking at apartheid state in Israel. I mean, there's a lot of compelling issues there in relationship to how Trump is so easily manipulated broadly that all, I think, stack and are compounding. Plus, I think sort of the megalomania that he had such an effective and efficient attack that was well designed for decades. And that truly goes back to prior administrations with the bombing campaign that didn't push them back into oblivion, but obviously had a profound impact in setting back their nuclear program.
Let's move on to Kristi Noem. She's testifying today on Capitol Hill. And as Homeland Security remains partially shut down, just curious, should she be fired?
Yeah.
Should she be impeached?
She should be ashamed of her leadership, lawlessness. She should be ashamed of her testimony. She doubled down on stupid. She reinforced her prevailing theme that somehow these were acts of domestic terrorism. She should be ashamed of herself, but she has no shame, as so many members of the administration tend to share that in common. dear leader himself, Trump, being the principal in that respect. But no, total incompetency across the board. Let me double down on the incompetency. I was just leaving Palisades with people that have been torn asunder because of the fires here, that are still waiting for the President of the United States to simply submit a request to Congress to help the American people that lost their homes here in Southern California. Kristi Noem is sitting on $2.67 billion of money that we're waiting to have approved. And she hasn't even distributed those dollars to the people in need here in America's second largest city. So across the spectrum, what she's done to FEMA, what she's doing on a daily basis to the survivors and victims of natural disasters, not just in my home state, but across the United States, her gross incompetency as it relates to handling the affairs of ICE and Homeland Security on full display, Americans being killed, masked men riding around streets as if it was secret police, a guy dressed up as if he came off the lot of Warner Brothers here in L.A. in 1930s garb by the name of Bovino, that's under her command and control, that she allowed to continue in his own ways. Even Trump had to say enough and had to intervene and brought the bagman Homeland, who took $50,000 bribe from the FBI, and now he's appeared to be the adult by the flatness, the contrast of the surrounding terrain. So no, she should be ashamed. She should be fired. She should have resigned months and months ago.
I'm going to lower your blood pressure for a little while before
I'm going to have some coffee to balance it out.
Before I raise it again by talking about your book, Young Man in a Hurry. It's funny how all these people who are considering a run in 2028 are suddenly being bitten by the publishing bug. What is going on there, Gavin?
It's something you have never experienced or witnessed, has it? In your years of outstanding journalism, the idea that politicians would put out books around this time, interesting.
Very
and early
interesting.
Next year, I imagine a few more.
But why now? Why now?
Well, this is interesting. This was supposed to come out 3.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not a why now. It was never in that consideration. Last year, in fact, I had announced this time last year it was going to be published, but the fires pushed it back a year. But this was originally a project around my first term as governor. It was a project that included one chapter on my bio and my history. Sent it to Ann Gonoff. God bless her. She just passed away on publishing date of my book, The Legend at Penguin Press. And she was also editing the book. I submitted the book. It was about 2 years with Trump and Trumpism, COVID, the election with Biden, some interesting stories and tidbits and lessons learned in California, most blessed and cursed state. Submitted it, and she simply rejected it.
Wow.
She said, no one wants to read about COVID. I said, but it was a very thoughtful, honest, self-critical look at what we did right and
you
wrong.
Didn't shop at other places?
And she said, no. She goes, I was fascinated. And I said, I assumed she wanted the one chapter on my bio out. I was prepared to give that to her. Say, fine, I actually have a substitute chapter on, utility rates or something, some policy. And she goes, I didn't know you. And I thought I knew you. I didn't know about your mom. I didn't know about your dad. I just assumed certain things about you. She goes, I'm actually kind of interested in learning more. And she goes, that's a book that I want to sell. That's a book you need to write. It's your decision. You want to move forward with this? I'll do it. But that's not the best you can do. And it forced me to go through a process of discovery. A Young Man in a Hurry became a memoir of discovery because I had to go deep and start to learn about myself, my history, my family, things no one ever told me, lies that they did, truths that were revealed, and a reflection in my own complicity in who I am and how people perceive me.
You recently said I've become a caricature of myself and contributed to it as it relates to this perception of privilege and wealth that has dogged me and at times infuriated, not just frustrated me. Reading the book, it's clear, first of all, that Anne felt the same way a lot of people felt. They kind of know this Gavin Newsom, the veneer, but don't really understand, I think. And maybe part of it is because you haven't let people in. But this book really does pull the veil off. And your young life was much more complicated, I think, than people might realize. Your parents separated when you were just, I think 3 years old. You were a toddler.
Years old,
And you and your younger sister, Hillary, were raised primarily by your mom, Tessa.
Yeah, almost exclusively.
Yeah, and you learned a lot about your mom. Tell me about her.
Yeah, I never knew why they got divorced. Neither would ever talk about it. And nor did I ever know why my mom was so insistent. She passed away about 20 years ago. Why she was so insistent on me not going into politics. I mean, she was very clear and emphatic. Whatever else you do, just don't go into politics. She never would explain beyond that. I would try to solicit some more, sort of layered feedback. And she said, no, you should be in business. I was a small business person at the time. You should pursue other things. And I find out, and writing this book, that there was an oral history done of my father's family at the Bancroft Library at UC Berkeley. No one had told me. I went and got this oral history and started reading these transcripts where my father describes why he got divorced from my mom, who was 19 when she was pregnant with me.
And he was 32?
32, 33, and he describes in there scandal, he said, in terms of the age differential. And that played obviously a profound role in my mom's life because she was looking for an adult. She was looking for someone to take care of her. And here she is with a husband who was, quote unquote, broke and broken after running for county supervisor and losing, running for state senate and losing, running for 2 political offices, losing, and just had a breakdown and took off. There's my origin story with my mom, why politics had such an outsized role, negative role in her life. She never revealed that, nor did my dad. And so, again, in this process, I discovered what not just their motivations, their challenges, but what makes me tick. Why I put a mask on, as you suggest. Why I was wearing suits in high school. Why I have certain utterances. Why I discovered hair gel, dare I say.
We're going to discuss that later.
May have lost someone there. And I started to, my face started to grow into someone I wasn't, where I was becoming an inauthentic version of myself and being what I thought people expected me to be, and all the anxiety and insecurity that comes with that. And so that's what I try to sort of release, not just scrutinize, certainly not sanitizing, but also release in the process of writing this. It's just cathartic because it allowed me to honestly just take a deep breath and just accept who I am.
Meanwhile, so your mom is working her ass off, right?
Yeah.
Holding multiple jobs, trying to raise you and your sister. And your dad originally wanted to be a writer, kind of a man of letters, right?
Well done.
Mr. Erudite.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he became a lawyer and a judge and kind of a consigliere for the Getty family.
Yeah.
He ran for office a few times, as you mentioned. He lost. But I have to be honest, he sounds like kind of a schmuck. First of all, he abandoned the family when you were a toddler, and he was only present for occasional vacations. You describe your relationship with him as episodic, and yet you clearly adored your father. And I'm like, why weren't you more pissed off at him?
I didn't know any differently. I think when you're that young and you have vague memories, the only memory I have of my childhood is my first pet, which was a river otter.
Oh, that was so weird.
Of course, because it's the most relatable thing, isn't it, in the world.
And his name was Potter the Otter.
Potter the Otter. And my name comes from a book called that Ring of Bright Water, Gavin Maxwell, famous Scottish author. My father revered, loves, my dad was, but he was that guy. He was a rabid environmentalist and advocate for, and this goes to your question of why. He was about social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. He was a warrior in that respect. And of course, that was brought into my first memories as a child with this pet, but also his causes. And so I was always connected to that. He just wasn't there raising us.
You describe him kind of like a nice uncle, right?
Yeah. He was, I never, someone asked me.
But still, your mom is working so hard. That's so unfair.
It's a love letter to her. It's a love letter to single moms, to those. And it's, you know what it is? It's also, this young man in a hurry was never good enough for his mom. I learned, when you become a parent, it's obvious and apparent to any of us. It's not, the lens to which the world, the needs of the child, but you also have needs, and how broken she must have been, struggling without any of that reciprocity and affirmation, not just from a husband, but from two kids, particularly one that was struggling as well, which I write a lot about in this
Right, and
book.
you write about your
Yeah.
dyslexia. You're really candid about that and
Yeah.
how insecure it made you.
Yeah.
And there's a heartbreaking moment in the book in which you're struggling to read, and your mom tells you the
Yeah.
following:
I hated it.
"It's okay to be average,
Yeah,
Gavin."
I don't like you reading it.
Really?
I always hated her for that. And it's a terrible word to say, hate. It really angered me. And it's taken me a long time back to let that go, because she was struggling to raise me. Back to my original point I was about to make. She was going through, I can't imagine working 2, 3 jobs. And I'm talking literally 2 or 3 jobs. She had part-time bookkeeping. She was doing part-time waitress. She was doing a little bit of real estate on the side. She worked at iMagnons as a buyer, seller. She just hustled. We had roommates all the time. I had foster brother growing up. We rented out rooms. She just patched everything together. Just hard work and grit. Kind of latchkey kids raising our own.
Why wasn't your dad giving her money?
He didn't have much.
And then when the Gettys gave you all presents,
yeah,
you would return them for the cash and give it to your mom.
Which is, forgive me to Ann and Gordon that provided it, but it was like a windfall, $400 sweater or something, like, oh my God, what we could do with the money. And then we'd kind of split it up or something. And my mom would have a few bucks, but she did something I never fully understood it. Now in the process of writing this, I think she was also making a point. She would re-gift in the same box her version of something from Macy's or from Sears or something. I don't want to overstate it, but I'm not going to understate. That was sort of the contrast of these two different worlds. My father's relationship to money, but never wealth in his own right, but his relationship to it, which was very, very apparent. And that contrast, that push-pull, different reality of mom, that hard work and grit, don't explain, don't complain, and then this sort of, adventure that my father's life defined, particularly in relationship to his best friend, or his best friend, as he described, Gordon Getty.
Your dad, even though you speak so highly of him, he was also withholding. And you write that as he was dying, even as he's dying, he had enormous trouble acknowledging, saying the words, "I love you."
Yeah,
you write, he would not utter those words, and yet I had not 1 ounce of doubt that he loved me dearly.
Never. Yeah. I write in the book, this book goes up to basically when I got elected mayor, and there's an epilogue that expresses a transition and an epilogue that has a few little stories that we may get into. But my father was not expected to live through the election, and literally survived to see his son get elected. Again, my father's pursuit in 1967, 68 to run for elected office. Back in the time, the vernacular of the 60s, solving ignorance and poverty and disease, Sarge Shriver, Bobby Kennedy. Those were the heroes. Those are my heroes today, again, through the lens of my father. And those ambitions, that sense of pride that I think is so defined in that era in terms of politics and public service. But he, that night, when his caregiver was kind of pushing him. It was stated right. We won pretty handily, so they called it right away. And they looked to my dad, said, "Now's the time to say," and he did a little Jackie Gleason thing, as any good Irish Catholic father. But the reason I never doubted it is he would tell everyone all the time. And so all his friends would say, "I was with your dad the other night. We had a drink. He's so proud of you." And I heard that for years. And I started hearing it, and he came back in my life, not when I got into politics, but when I got good at sports. So whatever it took. Sports changed. That's the reason I'm here. I'm here for, obviously my mom and dad, Willie Brown, we can get to, and how sports gave me confidence I didn't have academically, got out of my shell, and then it made my dad a little proud, so he brought his friends. He could brag on his kid playing baseball, playing basketball, and he would show up. I'm like, whoa, there's Dad. And then I'd start diving for the ball, or I'd just swing a little bit harder. And it was a way of connecting with him. And we'd have dinner afterwards. Those are my great memories. Dinner with my dad and a few of his friends, always with friends. But those moments, and you live for those moments. Any divorced family, kid, you live for those moments.
Do you think it made you parent father differently, being raised by your dad the way you were?
Well, you know my wife Jen, who's a fierce advocate in her own right, and someone who has done documentaries about gender roles and responsibilities, and tasking and the like in terms of what she expects in a partnership. After all, and I can only imagine what was going through her mind when we first got married. Is what kind of husband are you going to be? And then when we had our first child, Montana, what kind of dad you would be? And I didn't know. I didn't know either. I fell in love with her. I had a second chance. We can talk a little bit about that. So I wasn't.
You want to talk about your first wife?
I don't particularly, but it's not an indictment. It's not a cheap shot.
Okay, that's fine. But a lot of people are like, wait, what?
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, you didn't spend much time on that first marriage.
No, we'll get
Kimberly
into that.
Guilfoyle,
when we come back
everyone.
from the break. We'll talk about that.
The best is yet to come.
Okay, it was see, a lot of speeches they're not memorable, so that worked. So I learned a lot from that, Katie, and I brought that into the relationship with Jen, and so I thought I proved myself in that respect. I'm a work in progress in that respect. But when I had Montana, I was so relieved in this respect because I didn't know. I thought I knew, but this lightning bolt from head to heart in a way, it's like, oh, whoa, like this is different. Like and I say light, like actual light. I'm like love in a way that I'd never, I thought I understood love, butterflies, all that, but like love, like this, like a deep breath, just this warmth, this intensity of feeling. And I have it for my 4 kids in profound ways. Oh, I wish my dad had that. Oh, God, did he miss that? He must have had it, but I don't know if he had it in the sort of baritone of his heart. And
maybe he had it, but he couldn't show it.
Didn't have the words for it. And that's a phrase, by the way.
I don't know.
It's hard. He came from a classic family. He went to church every single morning. Every morning. Alcoholic mom, tough dad who was the boss, they described him, but also, ran the neighborhood in many respects, old Irish family, but all the kids, church every single day. And so that, that marks a different generation in relationship to family and to tradition. And he was sort of the last vestige of that. And he kind of carried a little of that. And then he became, as he said, became a Catholic of a distant kind. And he kind of pushed away the older he got. And then we get closer and closer.
It's so wild, isn't it? What kind of imprinting you have on your children and how significant it is and how it's just awe-inspiring and overwhelming and intimidating when you think about how much you shape the psyches of your offspring, isn't it?
And we all learn this. It's not what they say, it's what they do. And I talk about that in the book, examples of what they did, and it creates a permission slip. Whatever you do, well, badly, mistakes, it creates that structure. And so it's just off the charts. And that's why, as I'll continue to say it, it allowed me to go, oh, that's why I didn't, my mom, dad, I didn't, I knew a little bit about it, her father's suicide, but I didn't know that he put a gun to her head as a kid and threw her against the fireplace and said he was going to shoot her in an alcoholic rage. I didn't know the details of his incarceration as a prisoner of war in the Philippines after the Corregidor March. Everyone remembers the Bataan Death March, not the Corregidor March. And he came back a different person. And how it shaped her, to your point, of imprint, and why she didn't talk for the first many years of her life, literally didn't talk. I thought that was a fable. Turned out I stress tested it was true, why she was so shy and timid. And here's a teenager with no wealth, no money, that had that shattered early childhood, raising 2 kids on her own with not much support.
And rushing to your father, right?
Yeah.
For safety.
Yeah.
Initially. And
then he takes off. And because he, and they, neither of them got remarried. And every time they got close, they kind of re-entered each other's life. And I wish both were around to say, thank you. I never fully gave them. Because all my weaknesses, all my insecurities, all my strengths, the reason I'm sitting here. God bless them. Thank them most importantly.
For even their flaws.
Oh, that's the gift. Their flaws are my gifts. My flaws have been my gifts. I regret many things, but I also am the person I am today. And I'm a person every day I'm becoming. I'm trying to be better every single, but I'm the willingness to stress test that, not to sanitize it. That's why this is, I believe this to be a different book. You opened up about, here we go with candidates running for office or those that may be, suggesting they may have no interest, but really do have an interest in another office, putting out books. I wanted to put something else out altogether. And I wanted to put it all out there. And I just want to tell my story for my kids, selfishly. And the third thing I can't control, which is how you perceive it, the critics, whether it sells one book, 1,000 books, 100,000. But for me, it was a blessing. The whole thing. I just learned so much.
Have your kids read it?
They only read the dedication. Hey, look, Montana, you and I are in the front. Dutch is like, cool. My 10-year-old, cool. That was it. I'm like, anyone else want to read it? Yeah. Where
Maybe
are you going,
they're a
Dad?
little young because they are how old? 16?
16, 14, 12, and just turned 10. Little Dutchy, who is in the book near the end during my inaugural. My little 2-3-year-old with a little pacifier and his blankie, and he's sitting in that. Here's the guy doesn't read, right? I'm the only I do not read speeches, but I will read a teleprompter because I'm spatially looking up. If I look down, I'll lose. I can't get the dysgraphia, the words get scrambled. Yeah, so I'm sitting there just like, nothing good about me reading a teleprompter. This is not something people should endure and experience. So I'm doing the inaugural speech. It's hard enough. I'm staring at it. And then all of a sudden I hear a bunch of noise in the crowd, and I realize my little kid was running around near the stage. And, of course, no one's paying attention to me. I, of course, can't look away because I'm going through the teleprompter. And then we will, in my first 100 days, and then all of a sudden I look down, and he's at my leg. And my wife is like on the corner, totally paralyzed. She's like, should I walk up? And I do what any dad would do. You instinctually pick up your kid. Again, pacifier in the blankie. And he goes into my arms and puts his head right in and falls asleep. And I'm sitting there giving the speech. And I'm like, and people are laughing, and I'm reading through the speech. And speech ends. And it's been 7 years, and people are like, can you give that speech again? No one remembers a damn word I said. This just was the thing, right? It's how you feel. And it was the essence. And for me, I'll tell you, Katie, this is the reason I bring this up. It's a long story, is love, but also that's where I wish Mom and Dad, that was, if they could have seen that. My mom never met any of my kids, but they saw that. Oh, come on. I mean, that was the moment for me. I was like, oh boy, I miss you, Mom.
And talk about a movie moment. I know you didn't plan it, but boy, I mean, talk about sort of inadvertently melting everyone's hearts.
He still does. He just turned 10, and we had 18 birthday parties, and he got another 2 days of gifts, including one this morning when I left.
He sounds like your favorite kind of Gavin.
I got to be careful. And he was the surprise, as my wife reminded me. But he's the best, and he's named Dutch. My dad lived in a small town in Gold Country in Placer County, very conservative. I mean, very conservative part of the state, and it's called Dutch Flat. And so was also, I named him on behalf of my dad, and where he spent most of his life, and where I spent a good portion of my life the older my dad got.
I don't want to gloss over your dyslexia because it was fascinating for me. I don't have that much experience with dyslexia, but how it affected you, how, your teacher was saying, he thinks his D's are B's, he's mispronouncing things, and explaining why you use some sort of, SAT words.
Yeah, you overcompensate.
Right? In your speeches. But how tough was it to come back and to be such a public person and to have to read so much and to have to, do much public speaking? How challenging was that to deal with and to overcome?
I love that question because I often think this is absolutely the worst profession to be in.
Right?
Because, I mean, what do politicians do? They read speeches. They have speech writers. We don't have those things. I don't have those things. So you don't get rid of it. You overcompensate for it and you find other strengths. But it was my greatest weakness. I mean, it was brutal. And anybody out there that's got kids that are struggling with this, oh, God bless the parents. But the children, they just feel dumb. That's a word I used all the time. Like,
and that's how you felt.
Yeah.
And I think your teacher even told your mom you were.
Yeah. I mean, no, they had no hope for it. I mean, this was, I was tracked with all those other kids, if you get my drift, and the sort of, you ended up in that little shed, right, on the other side of the campus.
Who had challenges.
The other kids. And so I was in those, and I got to know those kids. And by the way, it shaped my empathy, Gene. That's why I don't like bullies. It's why, that's why Trump, I have no problem punching Trump back because I don't like people talk down to people, mock people. I don't like people belittling people. My mom worked one of her many jobs with aid to adoption of special kids, the DeBalt family, with those kids with intellectual and physical disabilities. So I'm deeply involved with Special Olympics, deeply involved with Best Buddies. That's why, again, I love the Shriver family and everything they represent and who they are and their values. And but I also have this sort of deep, you feel, and that's what dyslexia. I think a lot of dyslexics they feel rooms, and so that empathy, the ability to just see things a little differently, to try to problem solve, willingness to take risks because you don't know how to do it in traditional terms. So you learn trial by error, iteration, problem solving, creativity, and you're like, whoa. So I opened my first business. I'm relatively young, and it's very different. People and I'm like, I don't know where this comes from. And I'm like, wait, and then I opened another business. I'm seeing things differently, trying to do differently, and I try to bring it to politics. I mean, I started taking risks in terms of a lot of the policies I would do where people are like, you don't need to do that now, slow down. And so it's been a gift. It's what a gift, but it wasn't easy. And for those that I know are struggling with it, and those parents out there, I know how hard it is, but you're not dumb. And the only thing that can stop you is yourself when you give up. And my mom never let me give up. Even if she told me it's okay to be average, she did that because she loved me, because she was basically saying, it's okay just to be who you are. You don't have to be someone else. My dad, would have been 1600 SAT as English professor, which we write about. It's okay. You don't have to be that. Doesn't mean you're not smart. She never said that. But it's what I've learned.
And that it's so interesting that still stings so much, that it's okay to be average, which I'm sure she was trying to comfort you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to move on to politics because I think a lot of people are concerned about the state of our country. There's a lot of anxiety, and I want to get your take on a number of things. You've gotten a lot of attention, and you just mentioned bullies, that you don't like bullies, for adopting a more in-your-face fearlessness that takes on Donald Trump in a way that actually works. You recently said, at the core of our challenge and brand is that notion that we are weak. And it goes back to the old strong and wrong versus weak and right. Given the choice, the American people always support strong and wrong. Mm-hmm. Trump understands this.
Yep.
I hear that, and I don't necessarily I want strong, but I sure as shit don't want wrong.
Yeah, well, how about strong and right?
Yeah, that'd be better.
So, but strength at the fundamental core, convictions. Look, the right is ruthless. They're ruthless. You got these propaganda networks, 24/7 illusion rules, facts don't matter. They caricature. I mean, their ability to shape-shift the conversation. We're constantly on the defense.
Manipulate things that you've said.
Not just what we say, but, the subject matter to which we even engage. Let's just think back, 2 years ago, it was all about CRT, and people were literally looking it up. Do we do this? What is this? And you realize, well, no, we're not. No one's really doing the CRT in K through 12. And they're shapeshifting. They're winning that debate. And we're like, what's a CRT? Then it's, DEI, ESG, anything with 3 letters. And we're constantly on the defense, and the right is, focusing on just power, dominance, aggression. We're trying to win debates. We're trying to be right. Back to the ruthlessness of the other side. And so I started to really shift after I got recalled. Didn't get recalled, but recall petition got enough signatures where I had a recall campaign. I'll tell you, that changes a lot of things because all of a sudden there's a finality to that. I mean, talk about humility. And for me, that mindset of all politics is local, I mean, I was like, threw that one out. I must have said, all politics is local. Everyone goes, oh, yes, it is. BS. It's all become nationalized and increasingly weaponized. And I discovered that when the RNC and Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee, and Trump, all these guys tried to take me out in a mid-year election. And there was a moment where I thought I was going down. There were some polls that were within a couple percentage points. We eventually pulled it out by 20 points. But it woke me up to this new world. I came out of that a different guy, ran for re-election, won by 20 points, only to have the fires a year or so ago in L.A., and back on my heels I went. And they were shape-shifting that. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, they're not even in office. They're winning the debate, another recall petitions out there. And I realized I needed to get into another gear altogether. And that's when I started putting out new fact sheets and websites, when I started shifting my social media. And that's when I really started to call out, dare I say, my party a little bit, saying we've got to fight fire with fire. We are losing right now. We appear weak across the board, across the spectrum of issues. We have to have more conviction, more courage. We have to be willing to take risks. We've got to fight the fight, and we've got to start to dominate the narrative. Trump gets this. He floods his own. It's shock and awe. He dominates our conversations every single day. He's dominating our conversations.
But isn't it because people are disgusted by him? I mean, how do you dominate the conversation in a positive way? How do you go from weak to strong, but with ideas that are really possible? I mean, there's different, I don't know really what I'm trying to say here, but it just to say there are different kinds of strength.
Yeah.
And
let me answer that.
And I'm not sure you want to be bombastic and kind of the way Trump operates. Is that how you go from weak to strong?
No, you do Prop 50. He tried to steal the election. Look, he knows he's going to get shellacked in the midterm elections. Why else does he call Greg Abbott to say he's entitled to 5 seats? Because he knows he's going to lose in November, so he's trying to rig the election. He thought we would maybe write an op-ed. I actually, for a moment, thought about literally writing an op-ed saying this is just so unfair. Democrats, we need to do more and better. Let's have a candlelight vigil, and we should talk more about democracy and our 10-point plan to bring America's renewal and how we can restore the soul of this country. I was saying and doing all that. And then I'm like, well, wait a second, what the hell am I thinking? These guys there's not going to be a 251st anniversary. At least in the spirit of our founding fathers, they didn't live and die for this moment, to watch the rule of law completely denigrated to become the rule of dawn.
So what did you do instead of writing an op-ed?
We decided to write new lines into the state constitution. We fought fire with fire. We put an initiative on the ballot, a special election, 90 days, raised $118 million, and we won. And we neutralize what happened, and we push back, and we send a message to Democrats. We have your back in all 50 states. Prop 50, after all, wasn't just about California. It was about the Constitution, our republic. It was about the 250th anniversary of our founding fathers, the best of Roman Republic, Greek democracy. So it's style, yes, to your point, but it's substance to the point I want to offer, including the lawsuits, including the efforts to be a little bit more brazen, bold, and aggressive in how we respond and the lines that we refuse to allow to be crossed in terms of calling it out with clarity and conviction.
Do you think that made Americans feel like Democrats were stronger? Because you all still, in public opinion polls,
not there yet.
That's not really reflected,
Not
and
there
people
yet.
Still think the Democratic Party is weak.
Yep. Well, that's going to change this November when Speaker Jeffries gets the gavel, and I think that's going to radically shift in our favor. I think the headwinds now are in pointed in Trump's direction. I mean, he's in retreat, not just in Greenland, retreat in Minnesota. He's retreat in every public opinion poll. Is underwater in every key category and section. The economy is getting weaker. Job creation is the worst it's been last year since 2013. Inflation's starting to go up. The only thing was a saving grace was gas and energy prices. Those are now starting to spike again. The market's now volatile, more volatile than they've been. Crypto has crashed. His entire domestic agenda is crashing under him. So we're going to take back the mantle. We're already shape-shifting, taking back momentum, not just Prop 50, not just those 2 gubernatorial successes, but 25 state legislative flips to 0 Republican flips. It's happening all across this country. The party's feeling its oats again. We're now starting to get back on our toes. You're going to see those polls reflect that. They're going to trail, but we are finally moving in the right direction.
A lot of people say we know what Democrats are against. They're against Donald Trump. We don't really know what they're for. And I've always posited, I don't know if you agree with me, that part of the problem is the Democratic Party is much more diverse than in terms of its messaging and its priorities than the Republican Party, which is very sort of simplistic, very kind of over and over again, with talking points.
Yeah.
I mean, what would they be,
Cut
Gavin?
taxes and regulations.
Right.
Yeah.
And not so much strength through not so much military strength, although that has flipped recently.
Well, they're good at identifying the villains. The villains are, the othering of people. It's the minorities, it's the gay, LGBTQ agenda. It's obviously immigrants in the context of Trump and Trumpism. So they're able to scapegoat vulnerable communities very effectively. And they've been able to weaponize that since the Southern Strat. I mean, that's a golden oldie. But they're also able to weaponize the media in a way that's just next level. These guys are disciplined. One American News is disciplined. Newsmax is disciplined. Sinclair is disciplined. The right-wing echo chamber is disciplined. We're not on the left. With all due respect, I appreciate MS. I appreciate some of the others, but we're not doing surround sound in terms of today's talking points. These guys are. They're ruthless in that respect. It's it's Pravda. I mean, the primetime liar is Pravda. I mean, Laura Ingraham is in business deal with Donald Trump Jr. How the hell is that ethical? How is that allowed in this country? By the way, with their partner, who's in partnership with David Sachs on a podcast, Chamath, who's deciding crypto and AI policy. And they're all part of this great grift. The story of the last year is a corruption story. Trump, we can get to that. But here's the point about what we're for. We're for America. We're not just against Trump. This is not just anti-Trump. We're for those endearing values, the historic project of this country. We believe in co-equal branches of government. We believe in popular sovereignty. We believe in the rule of law. And we believe we're all better off when we're all better off.
Those are lofty values and obviously admirable and ones that I would never disagree with.
Yeah.
But they're lofty. I mean, what can you say to the average voter that resonates with that person, that you want their lives to be better? Yeah. And I think that is what the Democrats have had a hard time articulating.
Yeah, we articulate 10 points plans as opposed to, look, it's remarkable when you get into the debates, and I've been to so many Republican debates, and there's just literally zero specificity that backs up the pablum, just the BS, the values. But the values resonate. People tune into the value. They tune into what you believe. So I've made this mistake historically. I read about it a little bit in the book. Is I'll come out with my damn 15-point plan. I lost you in the second one. My parents' agenda, getting $11 insulin, subsidizing more child care slots, and how I'm going to do 6 days of paid sick leave and 8 weeks of paid family leave. And then we're going to do an earned income tax credit. And then I'm going to do a child tax credit. I'm going to do a baby bond.
But if you don't do that, people are saying, where are the specifics, right?
But we have all that. And I was promoting all that the last 2 years. You didn't give a damn. All of a sudden, I put my picture on Mount Rushmore, mirroring and mocking Trump, and everyone goes, ooh, Newsom's fighting back. And so it's interesting.
Is it just that we're all so shallow?
No, it's that
our attention spans have been shot?
I don't know. People want substance. If you did a poll, everyone says, I want substance. They also need to be entertained a little bit, dare I say. And this is not my prescription, but I will offer this into the mix. Trump's an entertainer. And you know what? We tune in to get entertained. Even if we tune in, we're trying to tune out because the algorithm finds us. We can use a little sense of humor, Democrats. Sometimes we're a little humorless. What I'm doing to Trump, where I'm putting this mirror up to him with all caps on a guy who cosplays as the Pope and Superman, not just putting a face up on Mount Rushmore, is I'm doing it in a humorous way. And my humble opinion is this: Trump thrives when we're indignant. Authoritarians.
He likes to piss people off.
But authoritarians have historically been advantaged. Fascist tendencies, they want to appear to be more powerful than they are. When you mock them, they wither. They don't like being mocked. They don't like being made fun of. Humor, finding a little of humor in all this is why I think we've broken through a little bit more than most expected. And what you said, I love. You said over and over. I would just add, and over and over and over and over again, because repetition is the mother of skill. And it's hard because you want to be original, you want to be authentic, or at least
you don't want to be boring.
Yeah, except that's his ability to communicate the same rush. I mean, it's the same every single. It doesn't matter what the topic is. He's going to go back to those old talking points, and they become mantras in all our minds. If you were trying to escape, it's like going to Disneyland, coming out of that one ride, and you can't get it to free whatever that ride is.
Well, think about fake news, how that's become a mantra. And anytime something's written or said about him that he doesn't like, it's fake. But that fake news, there was never a term fake news until he showed up on the scene, and now it's like an earworm.
Yeah, and now you have truth and trust issues because it's getting harder to know what is true and what is fake, and that's
with AI
and
too,
AI,
right?
And that's another. We've got 2 other podcasts now.
Oh my God! Yes. All right. Well, if you'll do that, the other thing I think that you're trying to navigate is that perhaps the Democratic Party, and particularly progressives in the party, became too judgmental and too earnest and too demanding of people to convey things and be a certain way, when maybe they weren't quite there yet.
Yeah.
You've defended previous comments you've made that it is, quote, deeply unfair for trans athletes to compete in girls' sports. You've also asked your party to stop spending a disproportionate amount of time on pronouns and identity politics.
Yeah, I get the criticism on that.
And yet, at a time when the trans community is so under attack, talk about otherizing and scapegoating people. Yeah. People like Carl, one of my followers who is trans, feels as if you're throwing trans people under the bus.
Yeah.
And that you see them as a political liability.
Yeah, and I appreciate he's saying that, Carl's saying that, and in fact, he's saying it to the person who's promoted and signed more pro-trans legislation than any elected official in this country. Period. Full stop. Period. Full stop. And I can back that up. Who has a trans godson, who literally signed some of the most progressive trans legislation just 9 months ago, not 9 years ago, who 9 years ago, 15 years ago, was actually arguing with the HRC that they weren't including the trans agenda, just the gay and lesbian agenda.
So why are you kind of seemingly backing
off from that? Because I can't defend. I'm not backing off. I'm doubling down on all of that and the grace that people just want to survive and just want to live their lives out loud. And again, a record that backs that up. But I cannot back up an argument in favor in a competitive environment for sports, having experienced on multiple occasions, 2 years in a row, in track championships in California, the impact of that competition and how people were displaced and how we couldn't square the circle of how to make this fair. And so I don't think it is on the sports side.
What about the idea of letting local communities and school districts and states, or, I guess my question is, should it be a blanket policy?
No, and that's, we're trying to figure it out in our state. We haven't. And no one has.
Are you saying under no circumstances should a trans athlete compete in a competition in which the competitors are not the same as that person was assigned at birth, which is a mouthful, I know.
No, I've just been confronted. It's not an intellectual exercise for me. I've been confronted with very specific examples of this, and we just couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out how to make. Let me give you an example. We're iterating. Last year, we decided just to do an extra medal, and no one was really happy with that. The prior year, the trans athlete and the one that was defeated, that didn't get in to the finals, both of them decided not to compete in the finals. Like, well, that's not fair either. So we're 0 for 2. I've been asking, how do we accommodate? How do we address this? And so that's not throwing folks under the bus. That's just trying to. And trust me, people. There's a lot of anxiety out there in sports. I mean, when they do think at times there's an unfair advantage, not all the time, but there are moments where it's not. It's not a stretch to suggest there is an advantage. Quite the contrary. And there has been in those examples, and that's where I find it unfair. So it's my personal opinion as a champion for LGBTQ rights, going back to 2004 when I married same-sex couples, where the entire Democratic Party condemned me. Almost universally, all the leaders condemn me. I write about that in the book, who appointed the first trans judge in California, that has appointed many members of the trans community to the most powerful positions in state government, including our retirement board, that continues to advocate in many positions of government for the trans community, has signed more progressive trans legislation than anybody else. But on the issue of competitive sports, not all sports, in those medal sports, I respectfully don't think it's fair. And others will suggest, well, we shouldn't. It's okay. And I don't think, having met with the families on the other side of that, it's as easy of looking them in the face and telling them it's okay. I don't think it's as easy as people may think when you actually are responsible for trying to find some balance here in policy.
These incidents are pretty rare.
Extremely rare.
And so is this conversation, in your view, taking up too much oxygen in the national discourse?
Because we defend it. And then people go, well, how can you defend that? And all of a sudden now they're not going to be, I think you lose a lot of people. So I'm on the substance. That's my belief. Now, in the politics of this, it's overwhelming what people feel on this. It's not just Republicans. Democrats and Republicans have strong opinions on this as well.
A friend of mine said it's like 80-20.
Yeah. And so now if you're unwilling to accept what you see with your own eyes, competitive disadvantage or advantage, then you may not have any, it's going to make it a little more difficult to get into all those other topics. But again, I completely submit, never has more focus been, attended to so few people. And it's disgraceful what these guys do. And it's disgraceful what they've done in the trans community. It's disgraceful what they're doing on this banning bench and what they're doing to all the 4,340 books last year, a year before, that they banned. That had
medical care?
Yeah, and the medical care, what's happening in this country, and that's disproportionately impacts California. That's been a leader in these spaces, and UCSF notably. And Trump's attack on this community is disgusting. But doesn't mean on every single topic that I agree, and that's the one area I disagree. And good people can disagree with me, but don't, with respect, that's not throwing the community under the bus. Quite the contrary. It's providing the grace where we can actually protect all those other rights, because they're coming after all the other rights. And we make it, I think, a little easier when we defend what is more and more difficult to defend, the more and more high-profile examples like I've had experience with track meets in California.
Let me ask you about this constant tension between progressives and more centrist establishment candidates within the Democratic Party. Do you worry that the center of the Democratic Party is going to be divided among so many centrists that it will split the party up and end up working to the advantage of, say, a Democratic socialist candidate like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who beat you and every other candidate handily in a recent Yale Youth poll for voters between the ages of 18 and 44. To me, having covered politics for a long time, this is sort of the age-old problem of the Democratic Party. Do we go for someone who's more centrist, who's, more palatable to independent voters and maybe Republicans who are fed up with Trumpism?
Yeah.
Or do we need to kind of blow the whole thing up and go for somebody really progressive and who clearly appeals to young voters?
Yeah, which is great, and she's wonderful, and and she's well deserved that kind of support that I haven't seen in the polls, but I'm not surprised by them. Well, here's my humble opinion. Having experienced and been on the receiving end of disproportionate amount of Trump and Trumpism, and that has really expressed considerable alarm to this moment, we have to be more ruthless and win. We just have to win. So
how do you do that?
Right. You just have to put together a winning coalition, winning message, winning messenger. There's got to be a freshness. We've got to acknowledge the systemic issues that AOC and certainly Bernie have been incredibly effective at. That is, the economy is broken. You can't save democracy if we don't democratize the economy. We can't live in a society where 10% of people own 2/3 the wealth, where a 30-year-old's doing worse for the first time in human history, at least American history, than his the parents' generation. So no surprise that a lot of younger people that are delaying marriages, delaying having kids, can't even imagine renting a home, let alone owning a home. And so that economic reality is so real. There's almost a nihilism. I was at TwitchCon talking to a lot of gamers, and I've got a podcast I'm meeting with a lot of young people. And, there really is this sort of, darkness about the future. And you had AI and the anxiety there. And so we have to address all of that. AOC, the language of Bernie, AOC, I think play into that, DSA a little bit. And that's effective. But look, I'm for building a big tent. I'm not for being as judgmental. You implied that I had stated that before. I feel very aggressive about that. Should I have thrown out people in my party when they weren't supporting marriage equality, which was pretty much all of them, and say, well, you're dead to me now. You no longer apply, and you should, on no other issue are you progressive enough. And by the way, some of the biggest progressive voices in America that are leaders in the progressive movement oppose that. Of course, it would be silly and ridiculous. So we're going to agree to disagree on a few key issues, but we agree on basic fundamental values. So put that on full display with a lot less judgment, find those areas of common, try to build a bigger tent, and build a coalition that is truly representative, not just one guy on the gal on the white horse just come save the day, but a coalition, a party, a representative body of people that, understand the lived reality people are feeling, so that people can identify and feel connected to it.
And you all get along?
And I hope it's not. It shouldn't be zero sum. Now you have to find a candidate, so there is a process of elimination, and that's unfortunate. But
could a Democratic Socialist be elected president?
I don't know. To be determined. I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, there's sort of a popular vote construct where you can start to at least paint that picture, make an argument. We'll see, and then I could give you counter arguments to that. And then there's an electoral map that may challenge that, where you look at 7 swing states and 62 counties and you focus on where Bucks County may be in Pennsylvania, and that becomes perhaps, a little more challenging. So, you got to meet people where they are. That's the nature of it. Look, it's not an academic exercise. You got to meet people where they are. You got to sell something people want to buy, and you got to believe it too. And if you're inauthentic, you shouldn't even get in the game. So you also have to hold to your convictions, and so it's that perfect blend. That's what we're looking for, the unicorn. That could be authentic. You may not agree with them, but they're not disagreeable. They respect you. They're not being disrespectful. They're not talking down to you, past you. They're open to argument. Maybe they'll evolve. They're interested in evidence. They respect, the diversity of opinions, and they want to build a coalition, and they want to govern in a coalition, not just campaign in one.
You talk about authenticity, and interesting, I've been in LA for a month, and every time I meet someone who lives in California, guess what I ask them?
Why are you so lucky to live here?
No, I ask
Why
them,
not?
what do you think of Gavin Newsom?
Well, there's a lot of other Californians besides me. It's about 39 million others.
I want to hear straight from people who live here. You get a mixed report.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about California in a minute, because I do want to ask you about some of the things that you're facing in California. But what do you think is the most often used word to describe you?
I don't know.
Come on.
God is my witness. I don't know.
You don't know?
The one word? I mean, that's a distillation. It's hard for me to distill.
Okay, this is the one word that people use to describe you over and over again.
Resilient is what I would love to hear. See, I'm going to give you my response. I'm pretty resilient. What?
Slick.
Yeah, that's the look. That's what the book's about.
They
Yeah.
they describe you as slick.
Yeah.
And I am just curious why you think that is. Is it the hair gel?
It's the book. You're selling the book, Katie. It's literally in the book. It was one of the first questions you asked. I walked into it. I played to the character. I played to type. I was joking about the hair. I mean, I get it. And,
So what do you do about that?
I don't do anything
Do you
about it.
use less hair gel?
No, I'm just.
What do you do?
Because I let it go.
Do you have a Zoolander problem?
No, Jesus. Yeah, Zoolander.
Are you just ridiculously good looking, as Vogue said?
Hardly.
No, seriously, what do you do about that?
You don't do anything about it, because if you're going to do something about it, then you're bullshitting people. You know what? I am who I am. And it's fine. You don't have to like me. Or maybe you like a slick person. I don't know. Whatever. It's okay.
But the reason why I brought it up because you talked about being authentic.
Yeah.
And I think it sometimes works against you.
Yeah. It's just who I am. It's just who I am. And, I could go out and I can get one of these Hollywood producers to be a member of my campaign and pick out which taupe suit I'll wear, or which we've seen happen in the past when people literally are getting stylists to become someone they're not. I'm okay with who I am. I am who I am. Again, where I wrote the book, let it go. I don't long for, I'm here meeting the moment. I want to be accountable to the moment. I'm going to punch this bully in the face. I'm going to fight back. I'm going to have courage in my convictions. I'm proud of the work I've done. I mean, you want progressive, who else has done $25 minimum wage for healthcare workers, $20 minimum wage for fast food workers? Who else has done universal healthcare in the United States, regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and immigration status? Who else has provided over 400,000 subsidized child care slots, created a brand new K for all, community? I could go down a list, $11 and some. My point is, we've done all those progressive policies, but if I'm, like the way I look, the cut of my jib, then it's okay. And that's okay. And you'll have plenty of other folks to consider. I may not even be on that stage, and it's okay.
What do you mean you may not even be on that stage?
I don't know that I'm ever going to run again for elected office. I got 10 months left. I got a sell-by date.
Let me ask you a couple more questions. I know, Lindsay, your person is getting anxious. Lindsay, I'm almost done, but we're having fun here, and we're covering so many important issues. You talked earlier, Governor Newsom, about economic anxiety in young people, and I know that you are on the record. You're opposed to a one-time California 5% wealth tax because you say California is in competition with 49 other states. Billionaires could leave, as we've seen.
As we've seen.
But Bernie Sanders just released a national wealth tax that would be 5% every year in all 50 states. Is that something you could support?
Very different. And we can debate the merits of that.
What do you think of that?
That's a more interesting. I don't know the details. I think he literally just came out with that. I read some headlines, so I don't know any of the substance. Interesting. He picked 5%. I think he's modeling aspects of this, but I hope he doesn't model one aspect of what they're doing in California, which is that tax doesn't pay for teachers. It doesn't pay for firefighters. The tax in California doesn't pay for child care workers. It's exclusively for one particular use, and it's one time to address ongoing structural issues, and it's already had an impact. So California is the most progressive tax policies in the United States of America, and it's not something I've defended. It's something I've promoted and something I spent a great deal of time in my State of the State talking about. The nation needs to go back to higher tax for the wealthy. I believe in progressive tax policy, and I think we need a new tax bracket for the extraordinarily wealthy. Now, what that looks like, what's the exact threshold, how does it work, that is absolutely a debate we need to have. The imbalance between the rich and the poor is the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics, and that was said 2,000 years ago by Plutarch. So it's code red in terms of that imbalance. So it is understandable why Bernie is promoting that. It's understandable why it was promoted in California. But a nationwide debate is exactly the one we need to have. State by state, it will create a competitive disadvantage.
But at first blush, a national idea, the national concept sounds interesting to you.
Oh, absolutely. It's an imperative. Tax cuts for billionaires and corporations, cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, cuts to food stamps, a war without the War Powers Act invoked, and tariffs with a regressive component. That's Trump's policies, and they need to be reversed. So absolutely.
I want to ask you just a few questions about California, because as you well know, if or when you run for president or try to get the Democratic nomination, there's going to be a ton of focus on California, of course.
Good.
Which is often seen as a laboratory for progressive policy. And you've just talked about many of them.
Yeah.
But some of the stats are not so great. California has the highest tax rate, the highest poverty rate.
I thought we established that was a good
well,
thing.
maybe it's not so good for
progressive
for everyone, right?
No, not for the 1%, but for everyone
okay.
else. It's we tax. By the way, just on that, just briefly, because I know you go through the affordability litany and everything else, but as it relates to tax policy, California has the most progressive tax rate. Places like Texas and Florida have the most regressive. They tax their low-wage earners more than we tax our high-wage earners. So the question is, who is the high-tax state?
Then why is everybody moving there?
Because the 1% don't represent the 99%. By the way, they're not all moving there. We've seen population increase through the last 4 years in California. Just completely, people have to update their talking points. And California has minted more millionaires and billionaires than any other state in the country, and we do that on a weekly basis and continue to this moment. But the progressive tax policies, again, I think is the approach the nation should take. Those that have had the most economic success can afford a little bit more. These states that have regressive tax policies are slamming the middle class and working people. And I do not in any way, shape, or form want to align myself with those high tax states and those regressive tax policies.
Here's some other stats. Appreciate that. Thank you. The highest poverty rate, tied with Louisiana, the highest unemployment, and as Nick Kristof of the New York Times recently wrote, Mississippi schools outperform California schools, especially for poor kids. Now, people see that or hear that or read that, and they're like, no thanks, California. No thanks, Gavin Newsom. We're good.
Yeah. Well, the poverty rate is, you're talking about the supplemental poverty rate. Our poverty rate's about average. And we're right up there with Florida and Louisiana and others with a supplemental poverty rate, which has been the case for 40 years. And the original sin there is housing, which has been a problem in California since Ronald Reagan left office as governor. And we simply have a supply-demand imbalance, and we have zoning policies and NIMBYism that have been legendary. And we've finally broken through with some of the most progressive housing reforms in U.S. history. Our biggest critics, like Ezra Klein, would even acknowledge that progress in that respect. As it relates to our schools, we've seen some of the fastest improvement since 2011 till today as it relates to achievement and reading scores and test scores that we just announced. In every category, socioeconomic and grade, we saw progress, particularly here, interesting, at LA Unified School District. As it relates to Mississippi, it's interesting, it's well established. They hold people back in third grade. And so they have this sort of interesting, their scores tend to be a little bit inflated because of some of those policies that are not necessarily standard policies that everyone wants to promote across the country. And by the way, you can compare and contrast California to Mississippi. You could compare and contrast many other states to Mississippi in terms of that one data point. So you want to be, I think, a little bit more reflective of a broader sample set. But a lot of progress has been made in California's education policy. Community schools, after school for all, summer school for all. We were the first to do 2 free school meals. And of course, we created a brand new grade, preschool for all. We also did the first savings accounts. Everyone's talking about Trump's savings accounts 6 years ago, 5. I did it. We have 5.5 million kids, all our kindergartners. We did a $1.9 billion appropriation to create these college savings accounts, these career accounts, in addition to these baby bonds that we're doing, all in an effort to try to deal with financial literacy, connect the dots in terms of wealth disparity, not just income disparities, and address some of these systemic issues of poverty. More broadly, though, California has more scientists, engineers, more Nobel laureates, more researchers than any state in America. We dominate in every category, the biggest manufacturing state in America. We have more farmers. We have more ranchers. We dominate in ag, $62.1 billion. Our manufacturing output is over $405.6 billion. We There's no one comes close in AI. 32 of the top 50 AI companies in quantum robotics, the dominant leadership in future technologies as it relates to autonomy, space, advanced nuclear. We're 18% of the world's R&D, only behind China and behind Germany. 18% of the world's ID. We had 4 Nobel laureates last year at the UC system. We have more active patents than any other system, higher learning anywhere in the world. Venture capital was $106 billion. We're number 1 in business startups, and we created 3.1 million jobs. You brought up unemployment. Unemployment has been 0.9 to 1.1% higher. There's 5 or 6 UCLA studies. Again, since Reagan left office. Why? Read their studies consistently, 1% higher the rest of the nation, which it is again today, because of the transient nature of our sectors, because the hospitality sector, the ag sector, and because the relatively youthful population compared to other states. So all those things have truth. All of them are substantive arguments. And there's plenty of counter-arguments, including the fact we're the 4th largest economy in the world because our economic policies are working and our economic output is second to none in the United States.
You talk about how this book really taught you humility. So what do you think you wish you had done better?
More
or
aggressive.
That you could be better at as governor of California?
Yeah.
If you disagree with your critics, and you have certainly plenty to brag about if you listen to that litany, but when you think about it, like, what do you wish you had done better?
Well, a million things. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Or I'm a genius. We're all geniuses in hindsight. But a lot of these things, they're stacked with a lack of political capital that you absorb over time. Conditions shift. I'll give you an example on housing policy. For last three administrations, they were unable to get these land use and what we call secret reforms done. And the conditions were never ripe. And they presented themselves last year, and I put it in the budget, which was a risk, and we were able to get it done. Do I think I could have done that 2 years earlier? I don't think I could have done it. But I would venture to say I wish I did. So that's one. I wish I was a little less accommodating to your question, meaning so many interest groups, so many jurisdictional challenges. I'm a governor of the state that's the size of 21 state populations combined. It's just, there's nothing like it anywhere else. So this notion, you have 1,050 school districts, 10,000 schools, you have 58 counties, 476 cities, and you're constantly trying to land the deal. And I look back, some of those deals I wish I didn't land. I wish there was more friction. I wish I was less accommodating. I wish I was a little more aggressive in that respect. So those are the areas where I feel like some timing issues. I'll give you an example. More or less indulgent. We saw our unsheltered homeless population drop 9% this year, first time in 15 years.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that
but
because a lot of people want to know about that.
First time in 15 years. There's never been a governor that's actually experienced that drop in a decade and a half. And one of the things that's driven that is more accountability at the local level. The state's vision is realized locally. State is not in the homeless business. State is funding local government in that respect. I wish we were more aggressive on the accountability earlier. Mm-hmm. We're very aggressive now as examples of things in terms of iterative, coulda, woulda, shoulda, where we could have, I think, been a little more aggressive.
This is my second to the last question, but you mentioned Ezra Klein. I know you love the book Abundance. He was the co-author.
Yeah. Like the mindset.
You bought a bunch of
I like the mindset of it.
You bought a bunch for members of the legislature. Mm-hmm. A core tenet of that book is that progressives have a special responsibility to spend money wisely. Spending in California has gone from $208 billion when you took office to almost $350 billion in your latest budget just 7 years later. Mm-hmm. Now, your critics would say at least $20 billion wasted in unemployment fraud. Your state auditors said your administration failed to fully track more than $24 billion in homeless spending or measure which programs are effective. And you spent almost $500 million on a new 911 system that had to be scrapped. So how is this spending money wisely? And please give me your response.
Well, you want to get into all these?
Well, I don't know if we want to get super micro, but this
I think we need to because there's so much bullshit
Okay.
that's attached to some of this stuff. So the $20 billion, and this is actually an opportunity. The OIG at the DOL, exactly. Office.
No, what?
The Office of Inspector General at the Department of Labor under the Trump administration during COVID came out with a report that they estimated $163 billion of fraud was attached to the PUA program, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, during the Trump administration, federal dollars that were distributed. California was actually a leader in highlighting some of those concerns. California, we estimate, by the way, it was our own report, about $20 billion of fraud during the Trump administration related to that program, which was below the national average, which is interesting. Number two, we have since hired a former Trump official, Gregor Scott, who is prosecuting close to 1,929 at last count people have been prosecuted, and we've clawed back $6 billion of that $20 billion. We also led the nation with 3 programs, Thomson Reuters and ID.me, notably the 2, that actually stopped over $135 billion in fraud. And we were promoting and pushing anti-fraud programs back then. That's the specific. As it relates to the audit on the $24 billion, it's just total. It's been debunked. California knows where every single penny in terms of the homeless money went. What that audit reflected was local government's distribution on the final distribution at their end of the government to nonprofits, et cetera. But every single cent of that report we can account for. And that's universally accepted and known, but it's not an updated talking point for those critics. You may have had one additional point, and the broader point, though, was on the meta.
It was on the 911 system that cost $500 million but was scrapped.
Which was initiated when we first got here. They moved in a direction where they were trying to do these regional approaches. We're now moving to a single system. People that started that have been removed. There's now accountability that's being pursued as it relates to the contractor and the procurement related to that. And that is something that absolutely we are addressing in a meaningful way. But let me say what else we've addressed. We created the Office of Digital Innovation. We did DOGE before DOGE was possible. Well, we've eliminated positions, waste, fraud, and abuse, and redundancy. We continue to highlight that as it relates to the SNAP program, which we just announced some new anti-fraud efforts there that have saved taxpayers billions of dollars. Our budget, by the way, has the highest reserves. This year, we're going to have another surplus. Highest reserves we've had, paid down almost $19.7 billion in pension obligations. And yes, our economy has grown. And our budget has allowed us to invest one-time capital, $180 billion. You can go to build.ca.gov. You can see exactly where your $180 billion 10-year capital plan is going, where a lot of that money growth has gone to invest in the most historic infrastructure projects since Pat Brown was governor in California. And I'm very proud of that, as well as a lot of the other programs that we promoted and enhanced. But a lot of those things are just golden oldies that are Fox News talking points that seem to be California specific and not necessarily reflective, save my friend out there in Minnesota, to many other states.
You know, it seems to me that Americans are really desperate for good leadership, someone who truly appeals to the better angels of our nature, as Abraham Lincoln said in his first inaugural address, as he was appealing for unity. Do you think you're that kind of leader?
I don't know. I leave that. That's not for me to judge. It's for others to judge. I think all of us have the capacity to flow with the forces of life. All of us have the ability to use the most important authority, and that's moral authority in our day-to-day lives. You saw that as the steel of the spines of the Minnesota protesters that got Trump to reverse course and get in retreat. You see that. I was down in Fulton County. I was meeting with Ambassador Young, and we were talking about Dr. King and his relationship to Gandhi. And, I reflected after that meeting, this was last week, I said, neither of them spent a day in elected office. It was never Prime Minister Gandhi. It was never President King. And they were some of the most transformative leaders in our lifetime. So leadership can be found anywhere is the point. As it relates to the point that you're emphasizing around what I referred to earlier as the guy or gal on the white horse that somehow is going to save the day, it's a romanticized notion. In so many ways, the moment makes the man or the woman. It's and that person will appear. In many ways, the obstacle is the way. Trump currently, what stands in the way becomes the way, and sort of that stoic mindset, the impediment to action becomes the action. How we work around Trump and how Trumpism will play an outsized role in shaping that paradigm of leadership that we seek and will need as we turn from resistance to renewal, which all of us are looking forward to. When that moment presents itself, that leadership profile will present itself. And I think it's a very organic thing. And I think for any of us to answer that in absolute terms, humility and fate will determine that more than personal opinion.
Governor Gavin Newsom, the new book is called Young Man in a Hurry, a memoir of discovery. I can't thank you enough for being so generous with your time, for answering all my questions and criticisms and philosophical things. So I really, really appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.